Good morning and welcome to Saxton Fireside Chats. I'm Whitworth from Scene Change. Our guest today is an absolute force of nature. She trained as a lawyer, then moved into advertising, then in 2008 started Shoes of Prey, a brand which delivered customised shoes you could order online for a non-luxury price. It was an amazing company. It had world-class product, tech, manufacturing chain, brand, all of it was great. And on the basis of that, they raised $39 million to take it to the world and rolled it out around the world in an exciting 10 years for them. And unfortunately, it turned out that it wasn't a mass market product, and in 2018, she made the very painful decision to close it down. So it's going to be an exciting story to talk about. So Jodie Fox, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Give us a short history of the Shoes of Prey experience.
Well, so we started in 2009. We sort of came up with the idea in very late 2008. And we had this sort of extraordinary start where we had decided that we wanted to start an e-commerce concept. My two co-founders were working at Google and seeing the sort of beginnings of e-commerce take off in Australia when people were feeling confident about handing over their credit card and knowing that they'd receive something and it wasn't a scam. And I had discovered being able to design my own shoes, and it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And so these kind of mutual interests or passions came together, and we started this business where you could design your own shoes online. And you're right, we developed the tech so that it would, photorealistic images would pop up as you were choosing the different elements of the design of your shoe. And then we found that we couldn't work with the normal manufacturing processes. And so then we built our own factory as well, so that as soon as you finished designing your shoes and clicked buy now, it would then literally, like in seconds, print out in our factory, and then your shoe would start to be made. Our average delivery time was 11 days worldwide. So it was a really, honestly, it was one of the most extraordinary, fun things that I've had the opportunity to ever do. We had an incredible team built around that, with experts in manufacturing, women's shoe design, technology. So we'd started out with the intention of being an online retailer, and then that kind of grew into all these different areas as we realized we needed to solve another problem and another problem to be able to make these shoes on demand.
People take that for granted now, but back then that was quite unheard of stuff, wasn't it? You were well ahead of your time.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was all very new. So the customization movement was really, there was a lot of kind of curiosity about what that meant and what it could look like. And, really papers from MIT date back to the late 60s, early 70s, sort of posing the question of, is mass customization the future of retail? But no one had really kind of cracked a really good go at it. And we had extraordinary response. So we broke even in 2 months, hit multi-million revenue in under 2 years, and then started the fundraising process to kind of add water, so to speak, or rocket fuel, as Blackbird Ventures like to call it, to this kind of mechanism that was working. It was really, exciting to be able to push that further and explore more and more and more. And what we were hearing from our customers, from people that we wanted to be our customers in industry research, were elements that they would love to see happen at Shoes of Prey that would then tip it over into the mainstream. So they were things like, be available where I'm already shopping for fashion, and, make sure that the lead time is short. When we first started, our lead time was about 8 weeks. So getting that down to 11 days was definitely a big part of that. And to get there, we needed to have our own factory. But unfortunately, as we solved all of those things, what we realized was that we were actually very successful in a niche market, and that wasn't going to tip over into the mass market. So that was a really kind of tough journey as a business person. And I look at the climate that we're all in at the moment with coronavirus, and the impact that's had with all of the shutdown and lockdown on businesses. And I know there's kind of a lot of people out there who are going through those business challenges that are really extraordinary, difficult journey to explain, difficult journey to be on.
Yeah, again, you're kind of 2 years ahead of the rest of us. Yeah.
I really wish I hadn't been ahead of everyone on that one, but yes.
How was it personally for you, that moment when you just realised there was no way out and you were going to have to close it? How was that?
It was devastating. I mean, I remember one of my board members. So we had really beautiful support from board, investors, customers. You know, there was a lot of people that rallied around as we were entering the really, really tough times. And there were multiple stakeholders that we really had to, well, that I needed to pay attention to. So our customers, of course, the team, the shareholders, the board members, and managing myself as well was really tough. And so we were all going on this journey together. I needed to hold all of that together. And when we kind of realized that moment had come, the best way I could probably phrase it is a saying. And one of my board members had said to me, "There's always another move." And he said to me, I'll let you know the rest of that saying later. And the rest of the saying was, "Until you're dead." And I really felt that. Together with that team of people in all of those different stakeholders that I mentioned, we all sort of rose to try all of the different paths that we could possibly be doing for Shoes of Prey to kind of Phoenix, which is what was absolutely what we were hoping to do. But it wasn't the case, it wasn't to be, and there were many, many reasons for that. But I think one of the reasons I can sleep well at night is knowing that we really did try all of those things and that it was, you know, really consultative throughout that process as well.
How does it sort of feel to be a kind of success super person right up till then, and then sort of have to go within yourself? That didn't work. Like, how did you resolve that internally?
Okay, well, firstly, I didn't really think of myself as a super person, but that's really cool. But
I've checked your record.
I think the hardest thing was, so up until the 28th of August 2018, I would walk into a room of people and I'd be like, "Hey, I'm Jodie Fox from Shoes of Prey." And that explained a lot. That, you know, kind of gave a context immediately, an instant discussion, you know, and there was a huge amount of identity connected into that. And the day after that, I really just, all of that just evaporated. And when I would meet people, and I really did hermit quite a bit after that because I didn't know how to explain it. So I would meet people and I'd be like, "Oh, hey, I'm Jodie. And I didn't want to say I'm exiting my company at the moment, because I felt like that didn't tell the truth. That sounds like I successfully sold it. So, you know, I've just closed my company of 10 years, and what are you doing next is always the next question because it's a moment of hope. And the thing was that I didn't know because there was still so much that I needed to process. And you can't underestimate the amount that you need to process when you're going through something like that, because starting and running a business is a deeply personal thing to do.
Particularly when it's just you, because you had co-founders and then by the end it was just you, wasn't it?
In the last few months, yes, it was just me. But my co-founders had contributed extraordinary things to the business over the years. And, you know, there are always shifts and changes that happen throughout a business. So at the very, very end, the last few months, yes, it was just me. And I have to say, though, like Michael Fox was, you know, available to me on the phone, you know, whenever I needed to get institutional knowledge from him as well, which was, you know, really excellent. But yeah, there was definitely a sense of loneliness around those last few months and just seeing the dire nature of every day and every decision that was being made.
Yeah. Your bio opens with the line, "Jodie Fox is an author and entrepreneur who may or may not make it."
Yeah.
I love someone who's secure enough to actually say that. There's too many overconfident people, I feel. Tell us more about what goes through your head when you think about that.
Yeah. So the thing is that I think it comes down to what you define as success. And for me, when I think about, there's always this element of proving it, like, okay, can you pull that back together? Can you do it? Can you, like this? So there's a proving it to myself. And then, you know, there might be financial elements. For me, any financial success is more connected to having freedom of choice and being able to create new paths, or to be able to, you know, sort of choose my next step and things like that. Or even being able to choose to buy a coffee every day. Like, it's not necessarily about, you know, really elaborate big things. It's just the freedom to choose. So I think the entrepreneur that may or may not make it, sort of, to me, is I don't know that I'll ever hit a point where I feel like, okay, I'm done.
Made it.
Yeah, made it, great,
Ta-da.
tick. You know, to me, that there's never an up and to the right. It's always in that graph of success. It's always, you know, the bumpy road, the twists, the turns. So I don't think that for me that I'll ever be an entrepreneur that feels like she's made it. But I may or may not, because who knows what will happen tomorrow, who knows what will happen in a year's time.
I'm sure you carry those skills with you. I mean, the general view of you as fashion person, but you were a lawyer, you were head of law society at uni, you were 3 years with a top tier
You have read.
doing hardcore insolvency type work. Obviously, to choose to turn your back on that is a strong move, to turn your back on that salary and I assume the expectations of people around you. What did you draw from that whole experience?
That was really interesting, actually. So I've had a couple of real juncture points, career-wise, and personally, I guess too. So the first one was ending high school and deciding to do law instead of creative arts, and I still think about that a lot because I was very creatively orientated all throughout high school, trained a huge amount with dance and all of that kind of stuff. Then the next one came with then choosing law, becoming a lawyer, and then turning out of law into, sitting into advertising. Do you know what? I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm going to ask you to repeat the question because I just realised that I lost my train of thought.
You turned your back on a high-flying law career.
Yes, the salary, yes.
What'd you learn?
So I guess the biggest thing for me was at each of those juncture points, I was making a decision that would really impact my life and development. And every time I chose the learning, a heartfelt choice. The only time that I didn't was actually when I was going through law, and that wasn't really something that really spoke to my heart. It was something where I felt that I needed to learn how to think that way to understand how the world worked. So it was more of like a personal development, I guess, of skills and understanding. I really felt like when I would read the paper and read about businesses that I just didn't understand what was going on. And I come from kind of generations that have, over those generations, really tried to improve the education and abilities of the next generation. So I felt like, to contribute to that, I needed to be able to know. So going into law, good salary. I took a 50% pay cut to go into advertising because I needed something more creative in my life. And then finding that still wasn't quite right for me, took a pay cut down to 0 to start my own business. And I guess what I got out of those was that for me, it was much more satisfying to follow my heart and to, in an intelligent way, like looking at the skills that I would learn and what I would build towards and all of that kind of thing, having savings squirreled away to be able to make those decisions, the freedom of choice, was really important and definitely very satisfying. And it helped me to kind of feel that my life was fulfilling.
You see so many people who are trained in one area and they move it into a completely different area and they're much better because there's just more brain diversity there, I think. So I think that's what seems disappointing to your parents at the time. It's kind of like it does make you strong in the long run, which you had to be. So what did you learn about leadership as you went through particularly the end of the Shoes of Prey experience?
Yeah. So throughout the course of the business, and this certainly isn't something that only I can take credit for. There were many people in the business who were really instrumental to kicking this off and then fostering it throughout the course of the business and developing it. I think for me, the really key thing was in leadership was having put architecture around our culture and then actively delivered on it and held ourselves accountable, not just at the sort of C-suite level, but all the way through the business, held people accountable to that culture. So I remember when we were about 15 people in the business, we started to realize that there were these points of friction that were coming up and just in day-to-day things. And when we started to analyze, why people were maybe butting heads over, maybe the way a project was going or something like that, was actually because both people really believed in the culture, but had ever so slightly different ideas of what the culture was and how that operated and was executed. So I remember one of our team members was like, hey, this Netflix culture guide looks fantastic. So we went on SlideShare, had a look at it, and what we loved about it was that it was extremely clear. What we didn't love about it was that it just seemed to be a whole lot of sticks and no carrots. And we were like, I don't think that's what our staff is asking us for, but I do think they are asking us for clarity. And so Michael and I sat down and we developed our first culture code over a weekend, sort of drawing on what we we used the Netflix culture code as sort of the beginning or inspiration for what we were doing, rather than reinventing the wheel. And then we took it to our team, and it became a collaborative living kind of code that would get a makeover every single year. And then that was disseminated throughout our organisation. And it was our mission, it was our values, it was our beliefs all put in there. And it was things like, ask for forgiveness, not permission, talking about the respectful way to communicate with each other, encouraging each other to, maybe Google it and then sort of do your own bit of research, and then kind of come, if you've really got the question at the end of that, then let's, get in and brainstorm it together, because we all had such heavy workloads and had to figure a lot of things out ourselves on the fly.
Did you adopt the bit that said expenses just act in the best interests of Netflix?
No, no, we did not.
Seemed quite bold, that one.
Yeah, no, we did not adopt that one.
Okay.
But a very different business to Netflix, I guess, and what a great business they have, particularly at the moment.
Indeed.
So anyway, we built that architecture, and because it was actively delivered on, because it showed up in all of our KPIs for reviews and development for our staff, I really think that flowed through. And then towards the end of the business, the way that it applied was, I think that there was something in there we talked about being, we're a family, but we're a sports team as well. So we expect each other to be training and raising to the same level so that we can be a really great team, but we care for each other as well. And so that came out at the end in places, in all of our offices actually, but I remember in LA, as we were coming towards the pointy end of things, I remember sitting the team down and I did a timeline of where we were and all of the different things that we were trying to do and how they played into each of those things. So their roles directly connected to the things that we needed to achieve. And I remember hitting one point and just saying, look, we are in a really tough spot right now. We'd reduced the hours of the team so that we could manage our salary expenditure line and extend our runway as long as we could to try and solve all of these issues that were happening. And I remember sitting them down and saying, guys, I know you've got bills to pay. I know you've got rent to pay, food, all of those kinds of things. And I am so grateful that you are here on this journey to see this, to make this happen with us. If you would feel more comfortable knowing you had other options, I'll even write your damn reference if you want to apply for other jobs, but my conditions are that you get the tasks done that you're doing here on time, that you're discreet. I don't want you waltzing through the office bragging about your next interview, and that when you do these interviews, don't disclose where we are and what's happening. Just you find your reason that you're doing these interviews and move forward in that way. And I didn't have a single person leave until we had to either make those tough decisions or close the business. So not a single person left. And I can say with my hand on my heart, there was never a time that I caught someone on an interview, on a phone call, or waltzing out the door in their best suit, for an interview. And I think that mutual respect and that humanity that we shared between us was something that was very, very important going on that journey together. And I'm extraordinarily grateful that we were a team of that kind of humans. But I also think that fostering that through our culture over all those years was probably something that delivered, particularly at that pointy time.
So the more carrots approach paid off in the long run.
Well, it definitely, there were sticks and carrots, but I think that just recognizing that we're all adults, we're all humans, that we wanted our work to be, we didn't talk about, initially we did talk about work-life balance in the document, but we scrapped that and said, your work should be life-enhancing. You should enjoy coming here. You should find this personally rewarding. And I think that just recognizes that your whole being shouldn't be just, what you punch out on your laptop every single day. You need to be bringing yourself into that as well. And there's so much great innovation that comes from that kind of passion.
And you had a similar situation in the factory in China, didn't you?
We did. It was amazing. So I personally went over to see those final days out in China. And our team there was pretty cool and very talented. And there was a lot of very, very difficult things to navigate in that market as a foreign entity, factories can be really messy, tough places. I'm really proud to say that ours wasn't a messy, tough place. It was well organised, our team was talented, and the culture had infused even through our China factory, which was very, very cool, and the hard work of our general manager and COO who were there. And the day that I let everyone go, so there was 140 people at that point, and I brought everyone together, and they'd been prepared that this may be one of the outcomes. And when you're in a factory as well, it's really easy to see when you're slowing things down or changing processes because it's very visual. So you'll see that there's only 1 month's worth of leather being ordered at a time instead of 12 months. It's extremely simple to know. So the honesty needed, in my opinion, needed to be there because otherwise you have too many narratives running away with people and imagining what might be going on. So I remember going in and having that conversation, and it was very, very difficult. Some of my team there were, one of my team members who was the second employee we'd ever had was there, and she'd really been on that journey with us. And then I remember going back to my desk, and we had lawyers and accountants and security, and there were all of these processes happening to finalise the employment of everyone that day. And my head of stitching and my general manager and my head of production all came to my desk, and they're like, Jodie, there's still shoes that they're not going to be made. What are we going to do? And I said, don't worry, we're going to refund the customers who have placed orders that won't receive them. And they were like, no, stop refunding. And I was like, what are you talking about? We had to refund. And they said, no, we want to make the shoes. And I was like, guys, this is it. Like I don't have more salary for you to see those shoes get made. Like, we're done. And they said, no, we don't care. We want to make them. And the whole factory stayed. That was Tuesday morning, and the whole factory stayed through till Friday afternoon to make and ship those shoes. And it was the most extraordinary thing because this doesn't happen in factories. This is not what you see from a factory line of people. And to me, again, it was that architecture that are being built and fostered and nurtured and implemented and held accountable to, all the way through to from C-suite sitting with the board, all the way through to a stitcher, through to someone who is on customer service, was a pretty extraordinary thing. And the effect of that is something I will never forget, and I'll always value extremely highly as a leader.
It's a remarkable story, Phil. But you had to say about that culture, like you had to sum it up in 1 or 2 words. What would the absolute core of it be that actually made them want to keep making shoes? What was it about Shoes of Pro?
I honestly think it was being seen and respected as human beings. Yeah. And I mean, that doesn't actually come out right. Just being seen and respected. And I think that is something that everybody is looking for, regardless of whether you are in a factory or whether you are, in an office, or whether you are out on the road, as a salesperson or whatever it is. We're all just wanting to be seen, recognised, and acknowledged. And to me, that's extremely simple, but takes a lot of execution and architecture. It's not just a slap on the back as hey, great job on whatever it is. You've got to make it meaningful. It's not a ping pong table, or that's a lot of fun too. It's not free lunches, even though that can be a part of it. It has to be really meaningful. It's about having, career ladders. It's about being clear with each other when salary increases or promotions might occur, and having really clear lines around that. It's about looking through into those motivational aspects of an employee and what they might need tweaked or throughout their career, or even in their day-to-day, to help stay engaged with what we're all doing.
Is it fair to say these elements are going to become more important as we move into who knows what over the next few years?
Yeah, so I mean,
these the skills?
I think so. And we're seeing, the sort of very empathetic leadership of Jacinda Ardern being, really respected and hallowed kind of around the world. That's resonating extraordinarily beautifully, and there's some really successful decisions being made in New Zealand. So I think that, that's a really good example of that kind of leadership happening right now. And no, I'm not comparing myself to Jacinda Ardern. I would love to be like her. She's great. I think the other thing that's where another hot topic that we're seeing, aside from empathetic leadership, is looking at mental health as well, and what the future of work, and I'm sorry, I know I just used a catchphrase, future of work, but what the future of work does, sorry, it's just the best thing to say, looks like around how we manage mental health and how that connects to retention, really good quality work and all that kind of thing. And there are huge elements of that we're going to need to address with the transition of going back into the office as well, because there's been a lot of people sitting at home stagnating and finding that environment quite challenging. Some people have found it great as well, and now that we know that work from home can happen, what does that look like with those discussions where previously employers have been quite insistent on being in the office, and what environments do we need to continue to insist on that with, and in what aspects can we be a little bit more kind of open to that?
Cool. And I like your innovative way of dealing with the whole COVID scenario by becoming a mother for the first time, actually, as the lockdown started.
Yes.
How's that been? Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been the most extraordinary, humbling lesson I've ever had, and the kind of love is really just completely overwhelming and beautiful. It's been, quite a journey to get to this point of being able to become a mother, and for someone who's written a book, I've got no words. And you're right, it's had lots of silver linings for us. Obviously, the lockdown has had an enormous number of challenges and anxiety connected to it. But having a child during this time has really just, it demands a lot of presence from you. And when the whole world is closed down around you, I guess that's not a bad...
Recalibrate your measurement of what it means to make it or not.
Totally.
I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's right. You mentioned you've got a book. What's your book called?
My book is called Reboot, and the subtitle is Probably More Than You Ever Wanted to Know About Starting a Global Business. And the reason that I called it the long subtitle is that the book is very much talking about the personal state of going through making these decisions and the journey of building and closing the business as well, because there's lots of books out there where, success is mapped in a really beautiful, victorious way. But there's not a lot of books out there that really dive into the nitty-gritty stuff of running a business. And honestly, whether you're running, a yummy fruit shop, or whether you're scaling, a really big, kind of global business as well, I don't think there's a lot that's particularly unique about the story that I tell. I think we all experience these things. We're just not necessarily talking about it. And I really strongly believe in sharing those lessons and having those conversations so we have the map rather than each of us carving out our own little pathway every single time on something that's already very challenging.
A book for the times. You should get that book. I feel like this interview could go for about an hour or 2 hours or something. So buy the book instead. Let's go to some questions.
Sure.
We have a question from Kian. Hi, Kian. Jodie, I bought my sister and my wife gifts, and they love not only the shoes but the whole experience and the little surprises in the box. My question is, what one piece of advice would you give to business owners in the current climate to be as customer-centric as you all were at Shoes of Prey?
Okay, well, firstly, I hope that they're still enjoying their shoes. So I think in terms of customer centricity, one of the tools that, firstly, actually, there's the gut sense. So just thinking about the things that you really enjoy in your customer experience with people, looking at what brands are doing that you love, little surprises that you get, and then just translating over what that means in your business, or just have that gut sense when you're thinking through about your customers. Now, onto the more more technical, sort of colder side, I guess. One of the tools that I thought was extremely helpful was thinking about your customers' emotion at every single stage of the process, and then how, as a brand, you would meet that depending on what your brand was like. So the best example I was ever given of this was from a gent in advertising named Charlie Wrench, and across the bottom axis was kind of, if you think of it with an airline, although I know that's not as relevant at the moment, but let's just go with it. Let's just go with it. So we're all thinking about holidays, sort of fantasizing in the back of our minds or feeling gratitude for holidays we've had in the past. So you can probably recall, like, when you decide that you're going to take a holiday, you get really excited and you're, a dreamer. So the first thing an airline can do is present you with lots of, beautiful, dreamy destinations. Then when you go to buy an airline ticket, you turn into a bargain hunter. And so the airline then needs to respond to you as a bargain hunter and serve you kind of less of these dreamy big images and beautiful prosaic language, and instead go into kind of like, here's the key information, here's the prices, here's how you can systemize, optimize that. Then once you've booked the ticket, you kind of turn into the organizer. And at that stage, the best thing an airline could do to respond to that and enhance that kind of, fun emotion you're having is, here are some checklists, this is what the weather's going to be like. So if you think about that emotional state of the customer at each stage of their journey, and how you can assist in that moment, that's a really great way to kind of build that customer-centric point of view and deliver on it.
How do you find that out? Would you actually go and talk to customers yourself? How do you stay in touch with what's actually going on in their minds?
So a couple of ways. I mean, at the beginning, it was more like, okay, I buy great shoes and I love designing shoes. What was my state throughout all of these? So you could just start with yourself. If you, then the other thing that you can do is, call customers. So I remember there was a period of time where I would ring kind of 10 customers in different categories within our business each month, and I would only ask them one question. And that one question was, tell me about the last time you bought a pair of shoes. And then the call would go for half an hour, and I would just keep asking more and more questions throughout that to push them through describing what their last shoe purchase was like. And there's a book by Adele Rivella, I think it is, and she's kind of the authority on how to really dig out this consumer insights. So that's a great book to read, and that'll sort of help to structure those kinds of interviews with customers so that you can dig out the insights. Because frequently with customers, one of the difficult things is that so for example, what shoe brands do you like? Oh, I love Jimmy Choo, I love Louboutin, I love Saint Laurent. And then my next question is, okay, so what shoes have you got in your wardrobe? Oh, I've got Tony Bianco, I've got, so I start to understand that while your aspiration is here, you will actually purchase this price point instead. So really separating out to get the insight from the customer. It doesn't always come from a direct question. It has to come from kind of digging a little bit further.
Yeah, interesting. Do you still love shoes?
Yes,
so it hasn't spoiled the whole shoe thing for you?
No, it hasn't.
Still go, oh, cool, shoes, let's go.
Oh my God, yes, I love shoes. Okay. That definitely hasn't gone. I still love fashion. I still sort of dig into all of that. There are elements of sort of a sense of almost, I think, PTSD kind of connected to some of the things that I went through towards the end of the company that were really quite traumatic. So I think that they sort of get a little bit triggered when I think about ideas for my next business or what I might do next in terms of my career. But in terms of fashion itself, and shoes, yes, still a big place in my life.
With the PTSD thing, I mean, do you still like dream that you're back in it sometimes? Like, does it come back to you?
I know PTSD is a strong thing to say, by the way.
Sorry for people who actually have PTSD.
Actually, no, I do think there are absolutely elements of it, and I know frequently it's associated with veterans as well. So I don't want to take away or make a comparison like that because that's extremely serious. But the kind of version that really comes up for me was recently going to trying to support my local cafe that I love, and going and getting my takeaway coffee, and just seeing. Talking to the owners or the staff and knowing what they were going through just brought back that huge flood and that sort of instant kind of taste in my mouth of what it was like when I was experiencing that. And I do think that there is going to be extraordinary opportunity come out of this, but there will be tough times first. It's messy, and that sort of really kind of reflooded that for me.
Yeah. I mean, as a business owners just feel it, I think. You look at it and just go, oh no, they're doing it tough, I hope they make it. You just, as you say, it's a taste in the mouth. You actually feel...
It's very...
Because they've had a go, you know? They've had a go.
They have,
and they're just, you just hope they make it. It's like watching little turtles run down the beach. I'm just like, come on, you can do it, little plucky little local cafe.
Yeah.
Carly, you asked a question about culture before. I think we kind of covered it. So if that covered it enough for you, right, yes, in the chat line. Will innovation in technology such as 3D printing offer a second chance down the road?
I guess the short answer to that is I'm not sure. Two reasons. So we did think about 3D printing a huge amount. To get 3D printing to the point where it was affordable and the materials felt good to wear on your feet would have meant that we would have needed to effectively open an entire research company and development company to develop those materials ourselves. Yeah. And that's too many companies and too much split focus, and would have taken a lot more money as well to invest in. My hope is that, yeah, that there is a future in that. I do believe in it. I sort of always used to have this kind of dream of the wardrobe of the future where you'd walk in and there'd be kind of an interface in there and you'd be like, good morning, Jodie. And it'd be like, okay, you know, I've looked at your calendar, you've got these meetings, I've looked at your the weather report, it's going to be like this. You know, I've looked at what you're probably going to wear today because I know your wardrobe so well, and I've checked everyone who you're meeting today for their wardrobe so you don't show up wearing the same colours or anything. And I recommend these shoes, and you know, the AI gets to know you over time, and you click print and it just print out in your wardrobe. Like that's to me a place that we could get to in the future. Yeah. But I do think we're a while away from that just yet.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So just to close, what are you, obviously there's a lot of apprehension and so forth around. What are you optimistic? What are you excited about right now?
Yeah, look, I think the apprehension is rightly placed. There's so much that's unknown for us in terms of how the economy will be, you know, how the government will look at that in the future as well, although I think they've done extraordinary things in the short term to see us through this really terrible time. But the interesting thing is that as we shift and change, we have to think about things in a new way. And Australia has been an ideas nation for a long time. We've invented some great stuff and we have some extraordinary talent here. And, you know, some of that talent is either not working full time at the moment, they've been furloughed, and you know, I mean, if you are looking to hire at the end of this, then there's going to be some wonderful talent to pick from. And some of that talent may even decide to start their own things. So I think that, you know, in terms of just our people, you know, there's something that brewing there that has extraordinary potential. And also too, coming out the other side of this, we are going to have to be thinking differently because the world has changed and it's not going back to what it was. So if we can really be embracing those statements that come up like, oh, what if it was like this? Or, okay, well, we can't do that anymore. I wish we could do X. Then embrace those and see if you can go for them, because that's where the moment of innovation really happens. And I'm excited to see what comes of that.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely exciting elements to all this chaos. And I think people that have worked across a bunch of industries and can see things in a flexible way will thrive eventually.
Yeah.
And we can all have a holiday at some point.
Gosh, yeah. And I mean, look, I have to say, I mean, I've always tended with holidays to look abroad, and always said to myself, oh, there's all these beautiful places in Australia that I'll go one day. Well, it's one day. It's one day right now. So that's we have this opportunity now to really appreciate what's happening at home too, and it's pretty great.
We do indeed. Jodie, it's just been a delight talking to you. It's a great story. Thanks for being so open and honest with us. And thanks for tuning in. Come back on Thursday for more Saxton Fireside Chats. See you later.